Welcome to the Autism Advocate Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Hales. If you're looking for tips on how to advocate for and understand your autistic child in a more meaningful way, you've come to the right place, and we're so happy to have you join us. Hi there, welcome back. I have a listener question for you. I'll be reading from my phone down here. Yesterday, my child got sent home with a threat right up from school and can't return until their doctor deems them not a threat to themselves or others. They have an appointment this afternoon, but I don't know how to stop them from saying things like, I'm going to kill myself, and other things, or throwing things and hitting and biting some of the people they're doing this to are well-known teachers and staff of theirs. Any advice on how to stop them from saying ugly words? We've tried so many different things, and I believe they're just saying it to get out of school. First, trigger warning that we will be using verbiage that talks about suicide. When we are talking about it in this context, while we never take conversations about suicide lightly, often the words are not quite meaning exactly what's coming out. That's a little hard to explain. We are talking often about a population that, again, we need to take every caution necessary when those kind of feelings are expressed. We are also talking about people, a population of children that may not fully understand what their words are meaning, the full extent of them. So back to the original question. Any advice on how to stop them from saying ugly words? Now, I will say that between the other things described, like being physically aggressive with hitting and biting, I would be most concerned with helping those physical responses get redirected or be expressed or investigated. Again, that's not to say that the other comments that your child is making are not very serious in nature. But I also have firsthand experience with children who don't quite understand the full context of the words that they are using. And the full meaning behind the words that they are using. So my first question would be, how old is your child? I would also be asking about that very same understanding. How much of an understanding does your child have about that verbiage? You said, let's see, I believe they're just saying it to get out of school. So the next thing I would do is investigate, why are these behaviors happening? It could be for any number of reasons. If they are to, as you had put it, get out of school, why are they looking so desperately to get out of school? So beyond just that's akin to a lot of people look at challenging behavior and say it's attention seeking. And that may be the case, or it may be an avoidance tactic or an escapage tactic, meaning that they are trying to escape or avoid doing something they don't want to do. And while that's not something we want to reinforce, I would urge you to take one more step to ask why again. So in this case, I believe they're just saying it to get out of school. Why? Why do they want to get out of school? And then what can we do about that? How can we, so that's the real piece they're trying to communicate, is that they don't want to go to school. Does that piece feel heard and explored and understood? Sometimes we feel as parents or caregivers or teachers or, sort of adults in charge, that if we acknowledge and accept the struggling feeling that a child is expressing, then we have to give in to that feeling or give them what they want. And that's not the case. You can absolutely say, oh, you don't want to go to school. I hear that. That's okay to say. You can acknowledge that, and then you can say, and I care enough about you as your parent or your teacher to help you learn that you can do hard things, that a lot of life is really fun and full of wonderful adventure and, relaxation and enjoying hobbies. But most of that will not be very possible if you're unable to work hard. And I know that's a bummer. Like, tell me about it. You can connect with your child. Now, depending on your child's cognitive or verbal abilities, a conversation like the verbiage I just used might not be helpful or applicable. But being able to bring that conversation to your child's level, meaning, I know you can do it. I also know it's hard. Both of those concepts can exist in the same place. You don't have to deny that the feelings that they are trying to communicate in order to try to motivate them or gain their cooperation. In fact, they will usually perseverate or focus highly on the feeling that they feel is not being heard, and often can't get past accepting, okay, this is hard and I can do it, until that part is heard. And if you consider if you had a friend and you were bringing them a struggle and they weren't willing to hear your struggle, they kept just wanting to throw solutions at you. Often we're just looking to be heard and understood. And that's not to say this parent has not done that. I don't know. Let's see. And as far as the verbiage, so again, this is so dependent on the child's cognitive age and skills and understanding. I would educate that child very compassionately with the utmost sensitivity and sincerity about what those words mean and how scary those words are, and that it's quite serious. If this is something that you mean, I need to take action on this right away because it's very serious. I know that I have been with children who don't understand how life and death work. A lot of exposure that they have had to the life and death process has often just been through very lighthearted video games where, they have 200 lives and they can get another life just by catching a green mushroom. If you don't know Mario, I probably sound very strange. That sometimes, depending on their understanding of the world, that could be the extent of their knowledge of life and death. And again, in our house, it is more effective for us to be very forthright and honest, even if it means discussing quite serious situations, than it is to dance around subjects that they are already discussing and using verbiage for that they don't understand. A lot of times, if we just use the phrase of, well, you're too young to know. You're too young to know about that. But they're already phrases that they're using, then it can be hard to stop something you don't know the reason why. Now, again, that's a totally personal parental choice on your part, whether you want to really explain that concept fully to somebody. But again, it's because they are choosing to use verbiage that describes a very serious situation, whether they mean it to be quite that serious or not. They have to know the consequences and what they are communicating to other people when they use those kinds of words. It would also be appropriate, I think, to introduce some replacement words for those words that have just as much weight or meaning. So often when people are very upset, they may say something like, "Oh, I hate her." Now, they might not actually hate her. They might just be really angry or annoyed with that person, but they are using an exaggerated form of, a term that expresses dislike to express their, and by express, I mean relieve their feelings, relieve that tension and that angst from what they're feeling. And it's the same thing that our younger kids do. A lot of times it's just that release of that adrenaline that's within you, that frustration and that anger. So if there are other more appropriate, really angry words that they can use while also feeling that you are still a safe person to make those words that they have said about committing suicide or killing themselves, that you're still a safe person for them to use those words with. There's nothing wrong with those words. There's nothing wrong with them telling you those words. In fact, I would caution you very much to not demonize the use of those words, because the last thing you would want is for your child to feel like they needed to express those words to you and felt they weren't allowed to, right? So while expressing, if that is something you're struggling with, I absolutely need to hear that, and I'm here for you. On the same hand, if that's not exactly what you're describing, because what you're describing is so serious, maybe it's something more like this. I'm so angry right now. And maybe it has to be a little more aggressive. I'm really pissed right now. I am so full of rage. So providing some appropriate alternatives while keeping that very serious set of words still available for your child to use if needed. As far as physical aggressions, again, I would look at what the child is trying to say that they're expressing and address those frustrating situations for them. Anything, if it's sensory, if it's a certain person, a certain task, maybe it would be putting less demands on your child. Maybe it would be the team coming together to say, we're at a place right now where they don't even like entering the building, let alone doing work. So how can we make this a fun place for them again? And that doesn't mean sunshine and rainbows. That's just saying we don't want them to, before they even do anything, to have that kind of emotional attachment association with entering the school building. So let's do a full week of the first activity we do is fun, something we know they love. And there have to be boundaries around those kinds of things, but whether it's, a short YouTube video or a letter from mom and dad or someone they really care about, maybe it's like a show and tell kind of moment where they bring something that they really care about and they're able to show it with some people. I would also make sure that their behavior intervention plan, if they are suspending your child, which it sounds like they are kind of doing, if they're suspending your child, then before any kind of suspension takes place, I would request a functional behavioral assessment to create a behavior intervention plan. So functional behavioral assessment, or FBA, is the gathering of data and observations to create a behavior intervention plan. Some people call it a BIP, BIP, behavior intervention plan. And a behavior intervention plan is part of the IEP, but a whole different section that focuses just on behavior, where if accommodations are not enough, the team, meaning the parents, the IEP team, the teacher, the one member of the administration, and some other person comes in to the team to observe your child's behavior, to watch the triggers, to watch the sensory environment, to try to determine where these reactions are coming from. And as you see and identify those patterns, then you can more appropriately determine what is causing, this child's discomfort and reactions, and then you can manage them a little better. We've noticed that it's always right after they have lunch. I think they just need, let's try an extra 10 minutes every day after lunch for them to be in the room transitioning, and they can choose between 3 desirable tasks. Right now, a desirable task for them would be either reading, drawing, or, I don't know, playing with blocks. Again, I'm not sure of the age of your child. And then they can more easily transition into back to the learning phase of school. Maybe the person who is doing the behavioral assessment notices that it's every transition or going from event to event, place to place, activity to activity. It could be a placement transition. So you're leaving that room and going to the music room, or you're leaving recess and coming back in. It could be every transition, a specific transition, always coming back from music, always coming back from speech therapy. Once you can identify what those triggers are, then you can work more specifically on effective tools and techniques to help avoid what we can that is undesirable to your child in the environment, and also simultaneously working on helping them build an awareness and toleration of those same things within the environment. So for example, if it is a transition from music to the classroom, every time, not from the classroom to music, but music to the classroom, what is going on? Why? First, you identified what it is, when it is, music to the classroom. Next, maybe we need to determine, is it a certain hall that they have to go through? After music, is it always a really difficult task that's being given? Is that when math takes place or testing takes place or something that the child really dislikes, so they're developing an anxiety toward it on the way back? Is it that they find music really enjoyable, almost like a recess, so that it's harder for them to transition back into that thinking and working phase? Is it that hallway smells really badly? Is it that the transition happens too quickly? Maybe as they close up, in quotes, music time, it's a bit chaotic. Maybe there isn't much of a transition warning in music of, okay, we have 5 minutes. Okay, 3 minutes, everyone. Could everyone say 3 minutes? 1 minute. Now we're packing bags. Maybe there isn't much warning. Maybe it's just everyone really hustles around, throws stuff together, and it's chaotic. And then the child experiences that chaos within. So those are all things that can be addressed with different tools or techniques, whether it is they have a transitional object or something that comforts the child that they get to hold during that one transition, or all transitions if needed. Maybe it's something that's slightly distracting, like a stimming kind of device, whether it's a spinner or a poppet. Maybe there's something that could be implemented as part of your transitioning routine along the way that's really helpful and fun. Maybe there's a teacher whose classroom is on the way back, and every day they give that teacher a high five, and they are really excited about that one high five. Maybe you give the child a helpful task. You would need to give this letter to Mr. Johnson when you pass him, okay? And every day it's a super important letter. And it could be just nothing. But now the child is focused on being helpful, productive, and not focused on the transition, but focused on the task at hand that they know that they can do, right? So again, there are all sorts of different methods for addressing the things that may be triggering these events, but you can't really address them until you figure out what's happening. The whys, focus on the whys. I hope that's helpful. I will say, I hear you. I get it. I wish you luck, and I'm rooting for you. I'll see you next time. Want to submit a question? Email us at theautismadvocatepodcast@gmail.com. Follow our social media outlets and check out our shop featuring my Autism Acceptance, Children's Illustrated books, and other fun autism acceptance items. Don't forget, I'm rooting for you, and we'll see you next time.